Welcome back to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Jackson Tolliver. I really appreciate you guys bearing with me here today in advance. I'm still recovering from this sickness, whatever this strange illness I have come upon is. That's why I couldn't record on Thursday. I had a fever that day. The night before, it was a rough scene, I'll be honest. But as you can hear, my voice isn't quite back to where I want it to be at, a little bit nasally, so I'm going to go quick here today. Won't be the same length as a normal episode, but I did want to come on because obviously there are some very important things happening right now in the Boston sports world, so I want to cover all of it. Starting off with the Celtics, who obviously won their game today against the Washington Wizards in a game that was very much, and rightfully so, overshadowed by Mike Gorman Day here in the city of Boston. Mayor Michelle Wu has declared the day of April 14th, Mike Gorman Day. It was his final regular season game. Now, yes, he still has the first round of the playoffs to keep calling those games because after that it goes to national TV. So he will have, anywhere between 4 and 7 games left. Hopefully not 7. Hopefully the Celtics can get that first round out of the way before that. But shout out to Mike Gorman, man. I mean, he is just a legend in this field. I know millions of other people have grown up listening to him call those Celtics games through countless amazing moments. I mean, they showed the montage today. Paul Pierce, game winners, Isaiah Thomas dropping 50, Tatum dropping 60. He has just been there through it all. So from me and from, I'm sure everyone else in the city of Boston, thank you, Mike Gorman. Everything that he has done for the Celtics organization and for us is just incredible, and he is an absolute legend, so shout out to him. Since I haven't recorded since Thursday, there have been 4 games that have gone on. I'm not going to go over all of them in excruciating detail because, let's face it, these games haven't meant much. The one thing I will mention, Peyton Pritchard has been astounding. He had a career-high 38 points today. That beat the career high he set a couple days ago against Charlotte, where he had 31, so 2 games of him dropping 30 or more. Peyton Pritchard, what he's been able to do this season. Now, the regular season is over. We can look back at before this season, he signed that 4-year, $30 million extension. That is looking like money very well spent, because I think if you had waited till after this season to try to get a deal done with him, it would have been a lot more money, because he has looked really, really good offensively this season. He's looked tremendous. So shout out to Peyton, man. I mean, he wanted to trade last year, because he wanted a bigger opportunity, to start. He wasn't really getting any time when he was here because there was more depth at guard. You had Brogdon, you had Smart. So he wasn't really getting that time, and this year he is, and he has made the most of it for sure. So shout out to Peyton. I'm looking forward to see what he can do in the playoffs. I think it's going to be so much fun to watch. Beyond that, I mean, Neemias Queta had a great game today. Steve Mikhailuk had a great game today, and all these guys have been balling out this last week. The games against the Bucks and the Knicks were tough to watch. The starters who played in those 2 games seemed completely checked out, which is understandable, but it's also somewhat concerning because, you have all your guys playing, you want to not get blown out, and even though the final scores didn't look like blowouts, those games were over pretty early because of how big a lead the Knicks and the Bucks got by halftime. So that wasn't a pretty sight, for sure. And, Mazzulla said after the game that it's tough to get, those guys to be motivated in that situation because there's no motivation to be found. You've already clinched the best record in the NBA. You're waiting for the playoffs. So I think that's how the players felt. And it's, of course, how the fans felt. We all just want it to be playoff time. I don't put too much stock into those games. I was frustrated as they happened because I always want the Celtics to win. But, these were definitely frustrating, but I will move past them and hope that they are just anomalies because the team had a lack of motivation, and my hope is that's not an actual reflection on how these teams stack up against the Celtics. I think the Celtics are better than the Bucks and the Knicks and could easily beat them in a 7-game series. Maybe not easily, but I will still take the Celtics over any team in the East. The one team I think has a really good chance against them is Denver. So we'll see how that all happens. Denver, I believe, is not yet. OKC just clinched the number 1 seed in the West. So the Western Conference playoffs are going to be just all over the place crazy. So looking forward to see who comes out of there. As of right now, after today's game, so not as of right now, officially, the Celtics will now either play the 76ers, the Heat, the Hawks, or the Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. Now, we won't know who that's going to be until Friday. So maybe I'll do my next episode on Friday instead of Thursday, just because it's going to be at night. Whatever. Now I'm talking to myself. We're not going to know who the Celtics are playing until Friday when the second play-in game happens. So on Tuesday, the Heat will play the Sixers, And the winner of that game is going to advance to the playoffs as the 7th seed and play New York, who just clinched the 2nd seed. And then the 8th seed is going to be determined by the loser of that game between the Sixers and the Heat versus the winner of the game between the Hawks and the Bulls. The winner of that game will be the 8th seed. So if I were to guess right now, it's going to be Philly as the 7th seed. They've looked really good recently. And probably Miami as the 8th seed, just because I don't see the Hawks or the Bulls beating Miami. I don't see Miami losing twice in a row. We'll see what happens, though. The one case that you really do not want to see as a Celtics fan is Philly landing as the 8th seed. That would be a disaster. Maybe not a total disaster, because I think the Celtics will still win that game or that series against Philly, but that is not going to be an easy series whatsoever. I mean, Embiid, despite being hurt, coming back from that torn meniscus, he's still Embiid, and the Sixers have looked really, really good to close out the season here. So I don't want to see Philly round 1. Hopefully they can beat Miami. They just did it about a week or two ago. So hopefully they have Miami as the 8 and Philly as the 7. And the Celtics don't have to deal with Philly until potentially the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, luckily that second round, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but the second round matchup, it looked for a second today like it was going to be Bucks at the 4 seed, but the Cavaliers somehow choked. They only scored 14 points in the fourth quarter and lost to the Charlotte Hornets. That's rough for sure. But the Hornets did win their regular season finale, and the Cavs got locked into that 4 spot. So the second round is now the Cavaliers versus the Magic. So whoever wins that series, assuming that the Celtics win their first round, that's going to be the matchup for the second round. And to me, that seems like a very easy matchup. I don't anticipate the Celtics having problems with Orlando or Cleveland. So the first round, hope that Philly wins on Tuesday. And then the Celtics play the Heat, the Bulls, or the Hawks, which I think the Celtics take care of any of those teams in 5. This is a different year for Miami. I really believe that. I don't think it's going to be the same story with Miami that we've seen. And then second round would be Cleveland or Orlando. Again, I think that would be easy. So the Eastern Conference Finals is where the Celtics will, I anticipate, see either the Bucks, the Knicks, or the Sixers. And yes, the Sixers, I think, would be in that conversation if they do end up being that 7th seed. I think they have a decent chance at beating the Knicks first round. I don't think they have an answer for Embiid, especially if he can play, similar to his healthy form. So these playoffs are going to be really interesting because I think top to bottom in both the East and the West, with a few exceptions, all the teams are looking strong. So I'm really excited to see these playoffs. I'm not excited for the idea of the Celtics playing Philly round 1 because I will be scared of a first round exit. I don't think it's going to happen, but at the very least, I'll be scared, and I think it's likely that series against Philly would go to 6 or 7, and I don't want that for the Celtics. I want them to be well rested after that first round. So again, it's all speculation at this point. We don't know for sure who the Celtics will be playing until Friday night. But for now, just be rooting for Philly if you're a Boston fan on Tuesday night, because I do not want to see that take place. So yeah, that's where we're at with the Celtics right now. These last few games, I'm not going to go over them too much because they don't really mean anything. But for now, we're buckling down, getting ready for that playoff mode. And another team that we have getting ready for the playoff mode is the Bruins. Now, the Bruins were badly beaten at home on Tuesday against the Hurricanes, 4-1. Not a pretty game. It's the inverse score of the last matchup. So the Bruins played last night as well, I'll mention. They played the Penguins, beat them 6-4. And now they have 2 more games before the conclusion of the regular season. It is looking like they're not going to get the 1 seed of the President's Cup because of this loss to the Hurricanes. That's probably going to be the Rangers. But I mentioned last episode, I don't know how necessarily bad that actually is. It is tough to draw the Lightning round 1, which it looks like they might do. That's a tough matchup, and it's going to be tough for the Bruins to get out of that. But I'm actually going to look up the standings as I'm talking too, because I want to make sure that I am totally up to date with this. What I mentioned last episode was the Bruins. I feel like were so confident in the last year's playoffs because they were so clearly the favorite coming out of it because of their historic regular season. But I don't think that would happen if they don't get the President's Cup. They obviously wouldn't have that confidence of having the President's Cup and having the 1 seed. So hopefully they could avoid some of that overconfidence, some of that cockiness that we've seen from them last year. So I'm going to the NHL playoff picture right now. So yeah, the Bruins are right now the 2 seed. And they would be, the wild card race is still Tampa, Washington's in there, Detroit, Philly, Pittsburgh. So yeah, if it ended today, it would be Tampa Bay versus Boston, which is definitely tough. And then Washington would be that final seed against the New York Rangers. So, again, hopefully Boston can win against Tampa. It's going to be tough for sure, but I do have confidence in them being able to win that first round if it does end up happening. Now, in these last few games against, like I said, they had the Hurricanes first. I just feel like the energy again wasn't there, and the defense was bad. That was reminiscent of some of the major problems that we've seen from the Bruins this season in terms of their defense, their lack of energy. It was a little bit of a weird game because they didn't have that many less shots than the Hurricanes. They just weren't converting. Like their control of the puck wasn't terrible, and their control of the urgency of the game, it wasn't bad. It just seemed like a lull to me, honestly. It did snap their 4-game win streak. Now, I'm not too concerned with this loss. It is tough, but I don't think anyone thought the Bruins would be able to sweep the Hurricanes in a 4-game series, or a 7-game series, rather. So you expect some losses to these top-tier teams, like the Hurricanes, like the Panthers. The one that scares me, of course, is the Rangers because the Bruins haven't been able to beat them all season. So seeing the Rangers in a potential playoff matchup would be very scary to me. I don't know if the Bruins would be able to do that. Hopefully they are. I'm just trying to be honest here. The Bruins aren't as far ahead of their competition as the Celtics are this year in my mind. Then again, last year, I thought the Bruins were way far ahead of all their competition and they lost in the first round. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But for right now, a loss like that against the Hurricanes doesn't scare me too much because they were on a 4-game streak before that. They bounced back last night against the Penguins. And I still think this team is very capable of winning. So I'm not too nervous about it. Tomorrow they have the Capitals, and that will be an interesting one because there is still a chance, if I'm not mistaken, the Bruins do play Washington round 1. It looks unlikely. It looks like they're going to get Tampa. But, of course, there is always a chance. And then they will wrap up Tuesday, like a sketch. They'll wrap up Tuesday against Ottawa at the Garden before they get ready for their playoff run. So the question is, of course, do I think the Bruins can win it? I do. I think that they can win it. I'm feeling very confident about both the Celtics and the Bruins, more so about the Celtics. But I think both these teams can do it if they just, really dial in, focus up. The coaching looks good this year. The roster's good for both teams. I think both of these teams, as they prepare to step into the playoffs, can definitely, they have enough to make noise, and they have enough to do this. It's just going to be a matter of, are they going to beat themselves? And both these teams definitely have capabilities to beat themselves. The Celtics, they can beat themselves with the 3-point shot. If the shot's not falling, they have shot themselves out of games, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen. And for the Bruins, it's, a lack of oomph. It's a lack of execution that could put them down. And I don't think that they have necessarily the grit and will to fight back from a deficit based off mistakes on a nightly basis. It's just what we've seen all season. So hopefully, the playoffs changes that, and both these teams are going to be on a roll all the way through the playoffs, and we will get 2 parades here in the coming months with 2 duck boat parades. Fingers crossed. That's the hope. But again, you got to make it through one round at a time. So right now, we're focused on Bruins Lightning, maybe, and Celtics Heat, maybe. But again, we won't know either of those confirmed until later on in the week. Now, we have done enough talking about happy things. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm still dealing with the sickness. My show prep today is not ideal as to where it usually is. I just wanted to get an episode out here because there's so much important things happening. So, forgive me for a quick episode. Anyway, we have to get to more depressing subjects. The Boston Red Sox looked terrible last week. Awful. Yes, they did just win today, and they did win yesterday against the Los Angeles Angels. But beyond that, it was a grim series against the Orioles. I was at the home opener. It wasn't looking good. And we had just heard the news that day that Trevor Story would be done for the season. Nick Pivetta would be heading to the 15-day IL, dealing with something in his shoulder or his elbow. I don't even remember. So that was a grim day. And the Sox got walloped at home to open up their season at Fenway Park against the Orioles 7-1. The next day, they had a 5-0 lead against the Orioles, and they choked and lost 7-5. They couldn't get anything going after that. The defense looked terrible. And that was that. And then the next day, yet again, they lost in extra innings because their defense was terrible. So that one was brutal. And then the next day, their offense literally couldn't do anything, and they lost 7-0 against the Los Angeles Angels, who, yes, they came back to beat twice, but these 4 games, I mean, I think they showed you a few things, which is one, that we already knew. This team's not quite ready to compete for a championship. That's not a surprise. But 2, it really highlighted how much the loss of Trevor Story hurts. Because Trevor Story, by far, is your best defender. So not having him is definitely pretty brutal because, of course, he also was hitting very well. He got some really key RBIs for the Red Sox in some of those clutch games that he needed to perform in. He did deliver, and it's really, really hard to see him go. And that is what impacts this Red Sox team the most. I think on paper, this Red Sox team was ready to deliver because in large part of Trevor Story. So that's absolutely brutal to see him gone for the year. But the Red Sox were able to turn around their fortunes from last week, albeit against a much weaker Angels team. Now going forward, they have this matchup with the Cleveland Guardians next. This will be a tough one for sure. The Guardians are definitely a better team than the Angels, I would say. But the Red Sox are going to have to deliver, and it will be tough. I would expect them to win. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't. I'd expect them to draw the series. How many is it? 3 or 4 games? Let me check. I would expect them, if it's a 3-game series, you know what? Maybe they'll just win it 2-1. I bet they will at home. Okay, no, it's a 4-game. Split it 2-2. They're going to win on the Marathon Monday, tomorrow, and then I think they will lose 2 and then win the last one maybe. I don't know. Just pulling that out of my butt. But it is a 4-game series. I will take a split, and then they have a series against the Pirates, and then it's the Guardians again. So get used to the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to be seeing them quite a bit coming up. I got to give a shout out to Tyler O'Neill, currently the league leader in home runs across the entire MLB. Who saw that coming? Not me. But he's looked great. He's been a great addition. The offense still has capabilities to be very good. It's just the defense is so bad, especially the infielders. I mean, the outfielders are fine. It's just the infielders are so bad. Rafi Devers isn't a good defender. Shortstop is Pablo Reyes now, or David Hamilton, whoever they have sitting there right now, not good. Casas is good at first base, I will say that. But beyond that, it's pretty grim. And there have been some key errors by the Red Sox that have cost them games in recent weeks. So hopefully they can clean up some of those issues, mistakes, and go back to being a good team like we saw when they were 7-3. Started off with a pretty good record across those first 10 games. So hopefully they can get back to that. Now, even more depressing than the Red Sox, there's only one team, the New England Revolution, losing again last night at Yankee Stadium to New York City FC 2-0 after they got absolutely embarrassed in the second leg of their CONCACAF Champions Cup. Couldn't even go out with grace. I believe they lost 9-2 on aggregate. At least Giancomo Vrioni scored 2 goals over in Mexico. But yeah, it's looking really grim for the Revs. 1-5-1, meaning 1 win, 5 losses, 1 draw. Haven't earned any points on the road yet. This is absolutely brutal. This is a brutal thing to see. Ever since Bruce Arena left, was forced out because of whatever happened. We don't know what happened. This team has fallen off a cliff. Caleb Porter is clearly not the answer. I think he should be fired. I don't know who you replace him with, but this clearly something isn't working. There's a disconnect between him and the players, between his tactics and what they want. Because talent-wise, again, I've said it all year long, all season long so far, all month and a half or however long it's been. The Revolution squad has talent, and they have enough to win. They have Carles Hill, who is still one of the best players in the league. They have young pieces that aren't being used, like Noel Buck didn't even play last night. So they have these pieces that are good. Buck is good. Barak Terovich is good. Barrero, when he comes back in probably a couple weeks, when Messi and Inter Miami come to town, oh God, I'm not looking forward to that. But Barrero will probably be back, which I am looking forward to. I will say Ravas did look good last night. So I spent a lot of time at the beginning of the season hating on Ravas. It's not his fault. Vrioni has looked better. Like I said, he got those 2 goals in Mexico, but has yet to score in a MLS match. Carlos Hill, of course, looks great as always. But beyond that, the defense has been poor. The possession and like the tempo and control of the play from the entire New England side has been poor. The chance creation in the final third has been poor. I feel like their final touches have been poor. Their finishing has been poor. They haven't been able to get shots on target. But beyond that, if I had to pick one thing out of all those problems I just mentioned, I think it's their chance creation has been bad. They just haven't been able to sort of get anything going. And, they had one really good chance last night where Carlos Hill got a cross into the box in like the 80-something minute before it was 2-0. It was 1-0 for it was 0-0 at half, and then it was 1-0 for the majority of the second half until New York made it 2-0. But right before that, Carlos Hill got a nice ball up to, I believe it was Shankalai. Yeah, Shankalai, who headed it goalwards, and it was a great save from Freese, the goalie for New York City FC. But regardless, beyond that, I feel like the Revolution this year aren't good at creating chances for themselves and finding opportunities to put themselves ahead. So they're playing from behind, and at that point, it's like, we don't know what our structure is. We're looking to our manager, and the tactics that he has put in place for us, we're not good at following. So there is a clear disconnect between the players and the coach, and between the players themselves, amongst the players. There seems to be a disconnect. I don't know why, but that's just what I see. And it's a bummer because I again feel like the Revolution could be so good, and they're not, and it's so frustrating. But I think it boils down to whatever Bruce Arena's tactics were working. These tactics with Porter aren't working. And the team chemistry in terms of on the field, I'm sure they're fine with each other off the field and they all seem like great friends. But on the field, they're having trouble creating chances, being in cohesion. If you watch a game, and next week when they play Toronto, watch the game, you won't be able to count the amount of times that there's a miscue, that the ball's put in the wrong place compared to where the receiving player wants it, that possession is just given up way too easily. There's just too much going on in terms of mistakes, in terms of miscommunications, that is preventing the Revolution from winning, and frankly, right now, preventing them from being a good team. So the Revolution are bad. Let's face it. They're not going to do anything this year. And I think that the ownership has to seriously look at Porter and, really reflect, because he should be so much better. He's a MLS Cup winning manager. Pretty recently, he won the MLS Cup with Columbus. So I don't understand what the problem is here. It needs to be figured out, and I don't think it's going to be figured out this season, unfortunately. I think it's going to take a long time. Luckily, we have Carlos Hill already signed that contract to stay with New England. I'd be very scared of him leaving because of how bad the team is right now. So hopefully they can get that figured out. My voice is starting to hurt, guys, I'll be honest. So I'm going to wrap up here. Celtics and Bruins, we will be learning a lot more about their playoff schedule as this week progresses, as I have mentioned. Red Sox and Revolution, we'll have some games. Hopefully the Red Sox can keep turning things around. The Revolution, I have no hope. Anyway, as always, my name is Jackson Tolliver. Thanks so much for tuning in to Tunnel Town Talk. I will see you on Thursday.